for your escape route. Not on a road in another state as the folks down south have had to do for the hurricane, but looking inside of yourself. Last week we studied the escape route that Jesus told us of when he talked of the single eye, the pineal gland of the brain. In overhead 5, we see the statement of Jesus in Matthew 6:22, and he says, "The light of the body is the eye. If your eye be single, your whole body shall be filled with light." What we did last week was to prove without a doubt that what Jesus was referring to when he used the phrase single eye was the pineal gland of the brain. But what I found very curious is that if you go on the internet and look in books, you'll see many comments from Christian writers who will never go near this thing of the possibility of the single eye referring to the pineal gland, because then they would have to admit that what Jesus is referring to would be of the East, and that, you know, destroys their whole biblical concept. They can't handle that. And so what they will say, the Christian commentator was saying, Jesus wasn't talking about the eastern single eye or the pineal gland. He was talking about keeping yourself focused on the truth. Well, we I think pretty much put that to rest last week, and with proof, you know, and I think it was a lot of proof. And if you were not with us last week, I would recommend you order the video, audio tape or DVD number 542, because it's on there. And I feel confident that you'll agree that there is no doubt but that the single eye referred to in that scripture of Jesus is the pineal gland of the brain, okay? Now, throughout the ages, there's always been writings and pictures of one kind or another of the single eye or the pineal gland. You know, it's always in the ancient mystical religion. But last week we discovered something that amazingly, I believe, can explain why it has been such a focal point of ancient writings. And this is a stunner. And let's just, you know, quickly review that. We'll look at the next overhead 6. It has been found that the pineal gland manufactures trace amounts of the psychedelic chemical dimethyltryptamine, you know, whatever, however you want to, you know. Psychedelic clinical dimethyltryptamine. The pineal gland secrete. That's why I titled this message "The Psychedelic Single Eye," and that's what we're going to talk about. Or this endogenous. Joan told me last time, she said you should tell him what endogenous means. It means that it's manufactured from within the body. Is that right? Yes. Okay. Chemical in the human brain is believed to play a role in dreaming and possibly near-death experience in other mystical states. If indeed it is this psychedelic chemical that comes out of the pineal gland that plays a part in dreaming, that too would kind of confirm my position with you for so many years, that when you dream you actually go somewhere else, but we'll touch that later. So what we found was there's this substance secreted out of the pineal gland that, you know, can take you on a trip, basically. Now, the pineal manufactures that long word there, dimethyltryptamine, whatever it is. And we went to the encyclopedia in order to check that out, and we'll see that in overhead 7. And it says dimethyltryptamine, created...
It's dimethyltryptamine.
Dimethyltryptamine. Dimethyltryptamine. It has ethyl in it. Did you notice that? Dimethyltryptamine. Well, out there. Created during normal metabolism in low amounts by the human body, secreted by the pineal gland. It also occurs naturally in many species of plants. DMT-containing plants are used in several South American shamanic practices. It is believed to be one of the main active constituents of snuffs like yopo and of the potion ayahuasca. Okay? Now, do you remember we were talking about when Jeremy Narby I went to the Amazon, and he's that anthropologist from San Francisco State University, and he was trying to figure out, how can you people, I mean, you're wearing loincloths and you're sitting around a bonfire, how the heck can you people, you know, be so pharmaceutically astute that you've got scientists coming from drug companies all over the world to figure out, you know, what's new, you know, you're discovering, how is that possible? And the shamans told them that the plants communicated to them what it was. And Narby found, by him taking ayahuasca, he found something startling. He said it was the pineal gland, which secretes one of this main constituents of ayahuasca, and what he was seeing were the serpents and the winding stairs and all that, and then what he came to the conclusion in his book that it was the DNA in the plant communicating with the DNA in the body of the shaman. Now keep in mind that dimethyltryptamine is secreted by the pineal gland, the biblical single eye that Jesus of the Bible talked about. Now look real quick what else the encyclopedia says. Induced dimethyltryptamine experiences can include profound time dilation, time travel, journeys to paranormal realms, encounters with spiritual beings or other mystical transdimensional modalities that by most first-hand accounts defy verbal or visual description. Is this what? I mean, this stuff is manufactured or secreted out of the single eye that Jesus talked about, and out of the single eye, the pineal gland of the brain, which has been a focal point of attention of ancient mystical religions forever, okay? And you know, we can say, oh, you know, but this is what people go to church for. They come, oh, come Holy Spirit. We used to sing a song like, come Holy Ghost and all this stuff. I didn't want really any Holy Ghost to come, but I would sing it anyhow because, you know, I'd be the first one out the back door if anything showed up. But anyhow, people go to church, and this is what, and where does it come from? What I want you to just keep focusing on here as we study this kind of strange stuff is that its connection with the pineal gland, which is in the center of your brain, you know, right between the eyebrows. Okay, so this comes from the encyclopedia. This trace amount of this drug can induce time travel and encounters with spiritual beings. Now, it's important to keep in mind, we're not saying the pineal gland secretes this to the extent that it causes, you know, what we're saying is that the substance from the single eye or pineal gland is scientifically connected with extreme trips into the universe of spirits and aliens of one kind or another. So when we consider that, we also have to consider that for ages there has been references to the single eye. We're going to number 9, so we'll skip over that because we got a bad slide there. But the spiritual eye as a conduit. And one of the things we can look at is the eye of Horus, which is an ancient Egyptian thing, which is right here. Here is the single eye. Now, we're reading and we're getting information that it is the single eye or the pineal gland that secretes this substance that is connected with external trips into some kind of spiritual or alien realm. And that's the eye of Horus. There are celestial bodies speaking to the universal eye, and we looked at them. I think the most graphic, when we talk about the eye, and now we're talking about the single eye, and we're talking about that which is within us that secretes this substance, and then we turn around and NASA, through Hubble, shows us this picture of the Hourglass Nebula. This is not a drawing. This is a picture of something that is in the universe looking down at us now, and this is the Hourglass Nebula, the eye. I mean, how graphic that can be. And of course, after we look at that and say, my God, that is in the sky looking down at all of us, and it certainly is the single eye. And so now we have this in the sky, we have the information that, you know, we're gathering, and we also consider the Eastern Kundalini and the biblical revelation, which is in Revelation 5:1, which speaks to the activity of the 7 chakras or the 7 seals, culminating in the lighting of the single eye or the pineal via electrical stimulation. And with that in mind, NASA showed us supernova 1987A with the eye in the center on fire right now. This is overhead. And NASA telling us that this part here, which we would call the eye or the cosmic pineal, will explode in a way that can be seen on planet Earth in 2005, which is this year. And all of the dimensional forms, and we went into long detail about this last week, and I won't today, but all of the forms, whether it be supernova 1987A or the Hourglass Nebula, are formed in the interlocking circles, 2 interlocking circles, which cause a 3rd circle in the center, which is called vesica piscis, the womb of the universe. In other words, what it's saying is that these 2 interlocking circles create the center circle, which is the womb of the universe. And we've talked about that before. And when we talk about the vesica piscis, which is the interlocking circles, I think we showed you, like last week, a long distance shot of the Hourglass Nebula. A moment ago you saw the eye, but when Hubble pulled back the camera, we saw the vesica piscis contained in the Hourglass Nebula in this picture right here. So you can see the 2 interlocking circles, and the eye is in the center there, the vesica piscis. Why this is also interesting, I mean, a few moments ago we looked at the latest crop circle, but there's a new crop circle that was discovered, and this was reported on June 11th, 2005, and it was quite meaningful in my study on this stuff because it is vesica piscis again, the center womb, and we'll show it to you right here. And this is this formed crop circle with. Now, once again, I don't know who made this, but that's not the relevant. The relevant point of this is that it is showing all over the place. When we look up into the sky, the prime things we're looking at besides Eta Carina, supernova 1987, the Hourglass Nebula, and we're getting into the understanding of this, and then this shows up as a crop circle, the vesica piscis. So all of these things are things that we just have to think about, whether it is a man-induced or not. The point is, the non-human induced supernova 1987 and Hourglass Nebula in the cosmos and the crop circle on the ground are all vesica piscis, which means new beginning. Well, with what we had discovered concerning the substance secreted by the pineal, all of the strange sights that we have shared, both in the cosmos and on the Earth via this crop circle, take on a much deeper and more mystical meaning. We simply cannot discard the single eye obsession over thousands of years, especially in spiritual realms, since now we find that that single eye or pineal secretes that substance dimethyltryptamine, which for whatever reason has psychedelic qualities. We have spoken of the shamans of the Amazon jungle. I particularly, when I was studying about the shamans, I came upon this picture of the jungle, and I particularly thought that was moving. But we've talked about them. And I came across another a person that I wanted to introduce you to. He's written an article called From Agony to Ecstasy, and his name is Jimmy Weisskopf. And what he says is, for centuries, the indigenous people of the Amazon River Basin have used a magical healing, and he calls it sacrament, known as Yaje or Ayasuka. Now, once again, here, as Jimmy Weisskopf is referencing what Jeremy Narby found to be the element that allows shamans with no formal education to become astute in pharmaceutical knowledge. But when you connect the ancient concentration on the single eye, which includes Jesus and the Bible, and then you see the reason why shamans use this Ayasuka, you find a connection. There's a connection. And no matter how subtle it may be, there's a connection. They, with no education, become pharmaceutically astute and can make potions that literally and really heal disease, okay? This isn't, you know, I mean, they really do. And what they use in order to gain the information is something that has a connection to the pineal gland or the single eye. Dimethyltryptamine is the main component of Ayasuka, and it's in all of our heads secreted by the pineal gland. Now we have Jesus saying, if your eye be single, your body will fill with light. Now we find that this substance, Ayasuka, has as its main element the substance dimethyltryptamine, which is secreted by the single eye or the pineal gland of the brain. There's a connection. Now, the question then would be, and this came from this Jimmy Weisskopf, why do the shamans use this stuff? What is their purpose? And he went into the Amazon jungle like Jeremy Narby did, and he sat and he talked with them. And this is the reason. Look at what he says. For centuries, the indigenous people of the Amazon River Basin have used a magical healing sacrament known as Yaje, or Ayasuka as it is called in the Quechua tongue, in order to see into the spirit world. That was the reason. In order to see into the spirit. Now, it doesn't make any difference whether it's, you know, this stuff is illegal here or whatever, or, you know, they got, you know. These people are in a whole different realm. They're in the middle of the jungle, and they're shamans, and so their obsession is with healing disease. And so they feel that in order to be able to physically heal disease, they first have to go into the spirit world to find out what's going on. Now here we get more detail on their reasons for its use. And look what he says. I will start by saying that Ayasuka is a truly remarkable psychoactive vine. Now, is that, I think, did we skip over one? Go to the one back. Okay. This, we skipped over one. Okay, Ayasuka, this is what I meant to say. Let's go back so I don't, okay. The point was, why do they use this? Ayasuka has also been used by native shamans and curanderos, healers, to identify, now watch this, the hidden spiritual causes of illnesses, and to treat the source of illness through direct intervention. Isn't that interesting? In other words, they're saying that they feel that illnesses of some kind, at least, have their origins inside of a person. You know, we would say, oh, it's stress or whatever it may be. And so it's interesting that here these shamans in the jungle look for spiritual causes of illness. In other words, what is going on inside our minds? What is going on in our personalities that has caused or contributed to the disease? See? Jimmy Weisskopf is not unlike Jeremy Narby in his interest to find out, you can take that off, what was going on with the Amazon shamans. He says, an army of anthropologists, ethnobotanists, intrepid intellectuals, and spiritual explorers have been trotting off into remote jungles for years in search of traditional healing knowledge. And that's what he's saying is very consistent with what Jeremy Narby says. And it's true, representatives of large pharmaceutical firms go to the Amazon jungle to see what is their latest discovery. You go into Rite Aid or Eckerd and you take something in a fancy bottle, you know, with a twist-proof cap and a nice label, and you know, it was put together by some guy in a loincloth, doesn't even have any pants on. But he knew. Somehow he knew. Or she knew. I don't know who these people are. And I remind you of that the latest discoveries have a connection in origin to that single eye that Jesus talked about, which is the pineal gland of your brain. So Jimmy Weisskopf, who was a professor in the university, I'll tell you about, but anyhow, Jimmy Weisskopf, like Jeremy Narby, went to the Amazon, and he took ayahuasca, and this is what he says. I will start by saying that ayahuasca is a truly remarkable psychoactive vine. After taking the drink many times, I fully agree with those natives who say ayahuasca is a living presence with a remarkably strong and vivid personality. It is not unusual for the spirit of the vine to appear in one's visions and announce that it is a direct channel to a superior being, God, nature, spirit. This was his experience. This is a very well-educated, you know, guy. Okay? So he is saying there was something more here than, you know, just going on a trip to get high, that he said that this, whatever it was, had a personality, and that some type of a spirit would appear and announce that it was a direct channel to God. Now, what I'm talking about here, you know, why we're looking at this is one reason only. Ayahuasca's main constituent, the substance, this dimethyltryptamine, is manufactured in the pineal gland of the brain. That's why we're talking about that, which is the single eye, and where Jesus in the Bible says, if you activate that single eye, you'll fill with light. You'll become enlightened. Evidently, these people do. So, however this happens, I can't tell you. So I call your attention to this, what he just said, because this substance has its origin in the human pineal gland. It is the subject of Jesus' statement that if you activate it, you will be filled with light, and it is the subject of Jacob's statement in the Old Testament in which he says, I have seen God face to face. Genesis 32:30. Jacob says, I have seen God face to face, and I shall call this place Peniel. Now, Jacob says he's seen God face to face. This guy's saying he's seeing spirits face to face, and they're saying that they're the direct channel to God. Is this guy's comment any less important than that of Jacob in the Old Testament? Well, Jacob in the Old Testament, our Christian friends would say, oh, this is the Bible. But he's not saying anything different than this guy. Well, yeah, but he took something. What do we know what Jacob took? Rene Descartes, who was the psychologist, whatever he was, of the 18th philosopher, he said, he called the pineal gland, which secretes the main component of ayahuasca, Rene Descartes said, it is the seat of the soul. Now, Jimmy Weisskopf makes a statement that we need to study because it brings us to our thoughts relative to the pineal and biblical statements that we have covered. This is very interesting. This is very interesting because he arrives at a conclusion here that gets you and me, because neither you, I don't know about you, but I know me, I'm not drinking nothing. You know what I mean? I mean, orange-flavored water from Nestle's is about as strong as I go, and you know, I haven't seen anything with that. So I'm not doing it. But he says something here that opens up to us the possibilities that of what Jesus said, if your eye be single. You know, through meditation you can do this. Watch what he says. While ayahuasca may resemble some psychedelics in inducing dramatic visual patterns and dreamlike images, I have come to the conclusion that the most significant Ayasuka visions are not solely biochemically induced. Instead, I suggest that Ayasuka removes the physical and emotional blocks which keep us from seeing the spirit world around us. In other words, what he's saying is, if we didn't have the physical and emotional blocks that hem us in from all of the things that we would be able to see. We would be able to communicate with this world that surrounds us. In fact, he says, once or twice during these half-conscious hypnagogic states that precede sleep, I have had brief Ayasuka-like visions that were not Ayasuka-induced. Those spontaneous experiences and the fact that some disciplined yogis and gifted psychics seem to have regular access to the spirit world suggests to me that it may be possible to see the visions without Ayasuka. So exactly what he's saying here. If your eye be single, that you focus on the meditation and stimulating the single eye, and you're being prepared by coming right here and hearing this stuff and knowing that this is not only possible, but will happen. As the most significant visions are not biochemically induced. This is what this guy says. And it may be possible to have these same visions without drinking or smoking anything. The point here is that the visions would be with Ayasuka, but Ayasuka that you would be given these visions with is that which is secreted normally through the single eye or the pineal gland of the brain, not with ingesting, but through meditation. And I will save that because I get a little bit, when I've been teaching about Dr. John Lilly and Jeremy Narby and all these guys, and they're all taking the stuff, and I don't want people to think in any way, shape, or form. But here, this guy gets beyond that. He had the experience, but he also knows in communicating with others, it's possible to have it without ingesting the stuff. Because we know now. I mean, everybody sitting in this room, if you're watching on television, you know the component of this Ayasuka necessary to see what we call the spirit world comes from the single eye or pineal gland that Jesus spoke of in the Bible. As Jacob said, I've seen God face to face. I'll call the place pineal. Jimmy Weisskopf goes on to make an interesting statement about such visions. And you know what he says? He says, the question is, how does purifying the body help us attain these ecstatic states? And then he says, over the years, I have noticed, now watch this one, this is really good. Over the years, I have noticed that the people who have the most difficulty achieving ecstatic states usually suffer from hyperactive minds. Interesting. I have noticed that people who have the most difficulty achieving ecstatic states usually suffer from hyperactive minds. It's true. And then he goes on to say, based on my experiences with Ayasuka, I am convinced that much of their mental restlessness is a direct byproduct of physical pollution due to chemical additives, too much food, and environmental contaminants. And he says, once our bodies are purged of this excess garbage through fasting, meditation, our hyperactive minds become calmer and clearer, allowing us to see, or at least to sense, the spirit energy behind physical forms. I was really taken by what this guy says, because that is exactly the reason that we march off and drop bombs on people, because some lunatic somewhere says, these are bad people. We don't see anything other than what we're surrounded with, our traditions, our religions, our government. We can't see beyond that. We're infected by it. And then, like he was saying here, chemical additives, God knows what. we can't do anything about it. But what he is saying was so when we come in here on Tuesday nights to do meditation, and we listen to the sounds and we listen to the music, to just take a half hour to purge that stuff away. So we're starting to close in relative to comments from one who has gone to the Amazon and taken this ayahuasca, and who states that, in his opinion, it's possible to see the other side without ingesting any kind of substances. Now, you combine this with the studies that we've done over the years here, as well as recently, that tells us that the single eye, or the pineal gland of the brain, which secretes an ayahuasca element, is the contact point of God. Now, what does the shaman himself say? In Jimmy Weisskopf's report, he gave quotes from a shaman called Don Pacho, P-A-C-H-O. And this is a... Now, remember something. You might laugh at this guy. And he might, be sitting around a bonfire with no pants on. But remember, he is pharmaceutically adept. I mean, this guy is putting together plants from one tree or whatever it is, and then finding another tree or plant that will go along with the first one, and when he combines the two of them, they heal things. And they wind up on a drugstore shelf. So, I mean, we can laugh at them to one extent, but on the other extent, somehow they're pharmaceutically adept. Look at what this guy Don Pacho says. When I am drunk with ayahuasca, he explains with conviction and sincerity, I fly up to the Milky Way and converse with the spirits, and they tell me how to cure. Sometimes in these visions, they show me a certain plant, and the next day, I go into the forest to find that plant, and with it, I heal the sick person. This is what Jeremy Narby couldn't understand. Jeremy Narby, an anthropologist from San Francisco State University, he's going in, he's sitting there with these guys, in that type of scene that you can envision from a movie. How in the world why are people from the drug companies coming out here with their suits and ties on trying to find out what you got new to heal this or heal that or heal the other thing? And this guy tells him he flies up to the Milky Way, and when he gets up there, they tell, but it works. You don't have to believe his statement. He can prove it because he is able to cure these different diseases with these plants. So you can say he's high, you can say he's nuts, but keep in mind that these strange people have been proven to have pharmaceutical knowledge that they say is given to them by spirits, whether it be in the Milky Way or who knows. Now, they have knowledge. They have knowledge that they could not get in any other way. Knowledge that Jeremy Narby says truly comes from the unknown, from the unseen. And that knowledge comes from a substance secreted by the pineal gland, which you have in your brain. What I found interesting from Jimmy Weisskopf was another description of visions. And the reason that I found it, and you can take it, the reason I found that so interesting is because I have had these myself. And sitting right here on a Tuesday evening. He describes a rush of figurative geometrical patterns similar to those he's experienced earlier. However, he said the patterns would now kaleidoscope into complementary shapes without losing their essential nature. I can't tell you that, I could say inch for inch, but I know that has happened to me, and in the States, sometimes you go into meditation. I don't know what your experience is, but the ones that I have, and I've shared that, I know I told Albert a long time ago, is that in meditation many times, I will look in on people and see their faces having conversations. I mean, people who, they're so clear, they're clearer than any television picture, and I know that I'm eavesdropping and I'm looking at another dimension somewhere where people are talking in a very normal way. So there are strange things. And there are strange things that you don't generally share with people. Because, you know, in my case, I don't want people thinking, oh, I'm saying I'm standing up here, I'm some big shot or something like that. It's not true. But there are these periods where you do go to another dimension and you do see things that are real. It's interesting when you read of the experiences of others, such as what we're doing here, and then you have a similar experience in a meditative state. It becomes very meaningful. And this statement by Jimmy Weisskopf, I think, is extremely important. I know that Joan and I have discussed this, and he makes this extremely, very, very clear. And he makes a difference between visions and hallucinations. You know, and look what he says here. Throughout this essay, I have deliberately used the term visions rather than hallucinations. Both may be products of the imagination, but a hallucination implies the creation of unreal images that are the work of a diseased or malfunctioning mind. In contrast, visions carry real truths and come from a healthy and inspired mind. You know, that's pretty good. And, you know, and I appreciated seeing that. And there's another point that Jimmy Weisskopf makes concerning the belief of the Amazon Indians. He says, according to many indigenous myths and traditions, all beings were originally endowed with paranormal abilities. But humans have lost these abilities due to contamination. It's easy to see how these visionary capacities, which were once vital, might be forgotten and lost in urban cultures that depend on nourishing other kinds of talents. In other words, you either use it or you lose it. And for the most part, people have lost it. Jimmy Weisskopf is an American-born journalist who graduated from Columbia University, New York, and Cambridge University in England. And he lived full-time in Columbia since 1977. He's a member of the Columbia Foreign Press Association and writes for the Wall Street Journal, Time, Americas, and other publications. So I found his information to be very, very helpful in carrying us along a little deeper into our understanding of what we discovered about the connection between this dimethyltryptamine and the pineal gland. Now, what I want to show you in a few minutes is how the single eye or pineal gland of the brain is integrated into the Christian church tradition, even without their understanding or knowledge. It's a strange, strange thing. Now, let me show you. Follow with me here. I'm going to show you something very interesting. This I took off of the internet. This is a church called the Church of the Epiphany. Church of the Epiphany is a parish of the Episcopal Church, a Christian denomination rooted in the Church of England. We are a church which welcomes diversity. We hold a variety of understandings about how God is involved in our lives, and we vary in age, race, politics, lifestyle, and tradition. Okay, my only reason for showing you that is the church is called the Church of the Epiphany. Okay? Epiphany is a holy day in Christianity. Now, we'll read about it here in the next slide. Epiphany. Epiphany is one of three major Christian celebrations, along with Christmas and Easter. It is celebrated by most Christians on January 6th to commemorate the presentation of the infant Jesus to the Magi, or three wise men. Roman Catholics celebrate Epiphany on the Sunday, which falls between January 2nd and January 8th. Epiphany is derived from the Greek epiphania and means manifestation or to appear. That's right. Appear. It's manifestation or something appears. In a religious context, this term describes the appearance of an invisible divine being in a visible form. So what it's saying is epiphany would be like Jimmy Weisskopf was talking about. You know, I see this form, this spirit form conveying this information and so forth. So we have this enlightenment or this light from epiphany. Now when you look at this definition, which includes the appearance of an invisible divine being in a visible form, it seems to go right along with what we have studied concerning the pineal gland or single eye and this substance, Asuka. You start seeing these visions of something, don't you? Okay, let's go and further look at the Epiphany, a Christian feast celebrating the manifestation of the nature of Jesus to the Gentiles. January 6th, in which this feast is traditionally observed. Revelatory manifestation of a divine being. Sudden manifestation of the essence or meaning of something, the actual appearance of God. Remember what Jimmy Weisskopf said? That the beings told him that they were the direct conduit to God. As in the burning bush, or a moment of divine revelation may be called epiphany. All right? So we have Christian church called epiphany, which is a sudden revelatory manifestation of a divine being, which certainly goes along with what we've been sharing with you throughout the night from Jimmy Weisskopf. And the substance taken by shamans. The shaman says he flew up to the Milky Way and met with some spirit, told him this stuff. I mean, why is it that the shaman is nuts, but, the epiphany? It's okay. Okay? Now, why am I talking about epiphany? We've been talking all night about the pineal gland of the brain. Single eye. So what epiphany? It's a Christian holy day. It's the name of a Christian church. Watch. Pineal gland, a small cone-shaped organ in the brain of most vertebrates that secretes the hormone melatonin, also called epiphysis. Oh, isn't that interesting? I wonder if the pastor of the Epiphany Church knows that. Epiphysis, pineal body, also called. So here we have Epiphany as a Christian holy day. Epiphany is the name of a Christian church. Epiphany meaning a sudden revelation. And we find that the pineal gland, or the single eye, is called epiphysis. The pineal gland, you ready for this? The pineal gland, or single eye, that secretes the substance connected to Asuka is called epiphysis. Now the interesting part of this is that the word epiphysis in medical terminology, though connected with the pineal gland, just means the end of a long bone. That's all it means, the end of a long bone. Doesn't mean it. It doesn't mean revelation. And yet it is connected to the pineal and epiphany, and indirectly the substance dimethyltryptamine, which is the main component of Asuka and responsible for extreme revelations. Epiphany, epiphanous, appearance, revelations, and they're all connected. Pineal, single eye, Jacob. So it becomes most interesting as to how the word epiphysis, which means the end of a long bone, became another name for pineal, which is the single eye, or as Rene Descartes says, the seat of the soul. And of course, in language connected to Epiphany, which is a religious day commemorating divine revelation. Epiphysis is a bone that can be in any part of the body. It has no connection to divine revelation other than through its name until you get to the brain. Look. The epiphysis of the brain, also known as the pineal body, is seen as a small round structure between the diencephalon and the telecephalon, whatever. When you get to the epiphysis of the brain, it becomes pineal. Epiphysis, revelation, appearance, divine form. You might say the connection is synchronous, isn't it? It's synchronicity, coincidence with a purpose. It leads me to the premise that the word epiphysis is connected to the pineal by a higher design. That by God, if you will, for the purpose of revelation concerning the higher order. The word pineal actually means what? Pine cone. That's what the word means. That leads to some deep but natural elements. So let's look at the definition of pineal. Adjective, Latin, pinea, a pine cone. Hence the pineal gland, which is cone-shaped. So the pineal gland means pine cone. Now let me show you